The space station floated quietly in the darkness between stars. It was called Haven Station, and it was humanity's biggest trading post in this part of the galaxy. Ships came and went every day. Some brought food, some brought medicine, some brought visitors from worlds so far away that even light took thousands of years to reach them. Ambassador Taewoo stood near the docking bay window and watched the silver ship approach. The ship was shaped like a leaf, smooth and beautiful. It moved slowly, carefully, like a bird landing on water. Taewoo smiled. He had been waiting for this moment for 3 months. The Valari were coming. Taewoo was a tall man with kind eyes and gray hair at his temples. He had worked as an ambassador for 20 years. He had met many alien species. Some were friendly. Some were dangerous. Some were so strange that he could not understand them at all. But he had never met the Valari before. This was the first time they were visiting a human station. The reports said the Valari were peaceful. They came from a cold planet covered in ice and snow. Their bodies were covered in soft fur to keep them warm. They had large eyes that could see in the dark. They walked on 4 legs, but could stand on 2 when they wanted to use their hands. The reports also said they were very careful about resources. On their frozen world, food was hard to find. They never wasted anything. Taewoo straightened his uniform and walked toward the docking bay doors. Behind him, Commander Hannah followed. She was younger than Taewoo, with short black hair and a serious face. She was in charge of security on the station. "Are you nervous?" Hannah asked. "A little," Taewoo admitted. "First contact meetings are always difficult. We do not know their customs. We might say the wrong thing." "Just smile and be polite," Hannah said. "That works with most species." Taewoo laughed softly. "I hope you are right." The docking bay doors opened with a soft hiss. Cold air rushed out. The Valari ship had connected to the station. A long tunnel now linked the 2 vessels. Taewoo could see figures moving inside the tunnel. The first Valari to appear was tall and graceful. She had silver-white fur that seemed to glow under the station lights. Her eyes were deep blue, like frozen lakes. She wore a simple robe made of dark fabric. Around her neck hung a golden chain with a small crystal pendant. Taewoo knew from his research that this was a sign of high rank. "Welcome to Haven Station," Taewoo said. He bowed his head slightly. "I am Ambassador Taewoo. It is an honor to meet you." The Valari woman studied him for a moment. Then she bowed her head in return. "I am High Delegate Yuna," she said. Her voice was soft and musical. "Thank you for receiving us." Taewoo noticed that 3 small figures were hiding behind Yuna's legs. They peeked out at him with huge, curious eyes. Their fur was fluffier than Yuna's, and they had round faces that made them look very young. "These are my children," Yuna said. There was a hint of worry in her voice. "I apologize for bringing them. Their caretaker became ill before our journey. I had no choice but to bring them with me." Taewoo looked at the 3 cubs. One had silver fur like its mother. Another had fur that was pale gold. The third was pure white like fresh snow. They were small, perhaps reaching only to Taewoo's knee. They stared at him with a mix of fear and wonder. "There is no need to apologize," Taewoo said warmly. "Children are always welcome here." Yuna seemed surprised by this response. She tilted her head slightly. "On my world, bringing young ones to formal meetings is considered improper," she explained. "It suggests that the parent cannot separate personal matters from duty. Humans see things differently," Taewoo said. "We believe that children remind us what we are working for, a better future." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Perhaps there is wisdom in that view." Commander Hannah stepped forward. She smiled at the cubs, and the white one made a small chirping sound. "They are adorable," Hannah said. "What are their names?" Yuna placed a gentle paw on each cub's head as she introduced them. "This is Bora," she said, touching the silver cub. "This is Duri," she continued, indicating the golden one. "And this is Nuri, the youngest." Nuri, the white cub, was still staring at Taewoo. Its eyes were so big that they seemed to take up half of its face. "Hello, Nuri," Tewu said softly. He crouched down so he was at the cub's level. Welcome to our station. Nuri made another chirping sound and hid behind its mother again. They are shy, Yuna explained. They have never seen humans before. They have never left our homeworld before this journey. That is understandable, Tewu said. He stood up again. Please, let me show you to your quarters. You must be tired from your journey. The group walked through the station corridors. Tewu pointed out various places as they went. The medical bay, the communication center, the observation deck, where visitors could watch the stars. The cubs looked at everything with wide eyes. Their small noses twitched constantly, taking in all the new smells. When they passed the recreation area, Duri stopped walking. The golden cub was staring at something through a window. Tewu followed its gaze and saw what had caught the cub's attention. It was a snack room. The snack room was a small space filled with shelves. The shelves were covered with food. There were bags of chips, boxes of cookies, containers of dried fruit, bars of chocolate, and dozens of other treats. Humans on the station used this room when they wanted something to eat between meals. It was always kept full. Duri pressed its small face against a window. Its tail, which Tewu had not noticed before, began to wag slowly. What is that place? Yuna asked. That is our snack room, Tewu explained. It is where we keep extra food for crew. Yuna stared at the room. Her expression was strange. Tewu could not tell if she was confused or shocked. So much food, she whispered. Just sitting there. Is something wrong? Tewu asked. Yuna shook her head quickly. No, nothing is wrong. It is just different from our ways. Tewu did not fully understand what she meant, but he did not push the matter. First contact required patience. He would learn more about the Valarian time. They continued walking until they reached the guest quarters. The rooms were simple but comfortable. Each room had a bed, a desk, a small bathroom, and a window that looked out into space. Please rest, Tewu said. We will begin our official meetings tomorrow. Tonight, you should relax. Yuna bowed her head again. Thank you, Ambassador. Your hospitality is greater than we expected. After Tewu and Hannah left, Yuna sat down on the bed. The three cubs gathered around her, still looking around the strange room. Mother, Bora said quietly, did you see all that food? Yes, Yuna replied. There was so much, Duri added, more than our whole village has in season. Nuri did not speak. The small white cub just pressed close to its mother, still overwhelmed by everything. Yuna stroked her children's fur gently. She thought about the snack room. She thought about how casually the humans had mentioned it, like it was nothing special, like having mountains of food was normal. On her world, food was precious. Families shared everything. Waste was forbidden. Children learned from birth that resources were limited. But here, in this place among the stars, the humans seemed to have more than they needed. Yuna did not know what to think about that, but she knew one thing for certain. This visit was going to be very interesting. The next morning came quietly on Haven Station. There was no sunrise in space, of course. The station lights simply grew brighter at a set time to tell everyone that a new day had begun. Alarms chimed softly to the corridors, and crew members began to wake up. In the guest quarters, Yuna was already awake. She had barely slept. Her mind kept returning to the snack room. All that food just sitting on shelves. No guards, no locks. Anyone could walk in and take whatever they wanted. It was impossible to understand. Her three cubs were still sleeping. They were curled together in a pile of soft fur, their small bodies rising and falling with each breath. Bora's tail was wrapped around Nuri, keeping the youngest cub warm. Duri's ears twitched as it dreamed. Yuna watched them for a long moment. Then, she quietly left the room to prepare for the day. The official meetings began after breakfast. Yuna met with Ambassador Tewu and several other human leaders. They talked about trade agreements. They discussed sharing technology. They spoke of building friendship between their worlds. It was the kind of conversation that Yuna had expected, but all through the meeting, her cubs were on her mind. She had left them in the guest quarters with instructions to stay inside. But she knew her children well. They were curious. They did not like staying in one place. And they had seen the snack room. At midday, the meeting took a break. Yuna hurried back to the guest quarters. The room was empty. Her heart jumped in her chest. She looked under the beds. She checked the bathroom. She even opened the closet. But her cubs were gone. Yuna rushed into the corridor. She looked left and right. The station was large and confusing. All the hallways looked the same to her. She did not know where to start searching. Then she heard a small chirping sound. It came from somewhere to her left. She followed the sound. It led her down one corridor, then another. Finally, she turned a corner and found them. All three cubs were standing in front of the snack room window. Their noses were pressed against the glass. Their tails were wagging. They made small sounds of excitement as they stared at the food inside. Children, Yuna called out. The cubs spun around. Their eyes went wide with guilt. Mother, Boris said quickly, we were just looking. We did not go inside. We promised to stay in the room, Dury added. But we could not help it. The smell was so strong. Nuri said nothing. The small white cub just looked at his mother with big, sorry eyes. Yuna sighed. She walked over to her children and knelt down beside them. I understand, she said softly. I know you are hungry. The food on our ship is not very good. But we cannot just take things that do not belong to us. But there is so much, Bora whispered. The humans cannot need all of it. Before Yuna could respond, a voice came from behind her. Is everything all right? Yuna turned around. Ambassador Tewu was standing there with a gentle smile on his face. Behind him was a young human woman carrying a data pad. Ambassador, Yuna said quickly. She stood up and bowed her head. I apologize. My children wandered off. They should not be here. Tewu looked at the cubs. They had backed away from the window and were now hiding behind their mother again. But he could see them peeking out at the snack room. They are looking at the food, Tewu observed. Yes, Yuna admitted. Her face felt warm with embarrassment. On our world, food is carefully managed. The children have never seen so much in one place. They are fascinated. Tewu nodded slowly. He seemed to be thinking about something. They must be hungry, he said. We brought supplies from our ship. Yuna replied quickly. We do not need anything from you. That is not what I asked. Tewu said kindly. I asked if they are hungry. Yuna hesitated. She did not know how to answer. On her world, admitting hunger was admitting weakness. It meant you could not take care of yourself or your family. But Tewu was looking at her with such warmth. There was no judgment in his eyes, only concern. Yes, Yuna finally said, they're growing cubs. They're always hungry. Tewu smiled. He walked over to the snack room door and opened it. The smell of food rushed out into the corridor. The cubs made excited sounds, but stayed behind their mother. Please, Tewu said. He gestured toward the food. Help yourself. Yuna stared at him. She could not believe what she had just heard. Help ourselves, she repeated. Yes, Tewu said simply. Take whatever you want. There is plenty. Yuna did not move. Her cubs looked up at her, waiting for permission. Ambassador, Yuna said carefully, I do not think you understand. On my world, accepting food from another without proper exchange is a serious matter. It creates a debt, a bond. It is not done casually. Taiwu's expression softened. He seemed to understand now why she was so hesitant. Among humans, he said, sharing food is a way of building friendship. There is no debt, no bond required. When we offer food, especially to children, it simply means we want them to be happy. Yuna was silent. This was so different from everything she knew. We have a saying on Earth, Tewu continued. No one should be hungry if there is food to spare. Your children are guests here. They deserve to eat whatever they want. The cubs looked at their mother with hopeful eyes. Their small tails wagged slowly. Yuna took a deep breath. She thought about her world. with its strict rules about resources. She thought about how every bite of food was counted and recorded. She thought about how her own children sometimes went to bed with empty stomachs because there was not enough. And here was this human offering mountains of food like it was nothing. "You are certain?" Yuna asked one more time. "Completely certain," Tewu replied. Yuna looked at her cubs. They were practically vibrating with anticipation. "Very well," she said softly. "You may eat." The cubs did not need to be told twice. Bora was the first to move. The silver cub rushed into the snack room and grabbed a bag of something crunchy. Duri followed, its golden tail wagging wildly as it picked up a box of sweet treats. Even little Nuri joined in, carefully selecting a container of dried fruit with its small paws. Yuna watched her children with mixed feelings. Part of her was happy to see them so excited, but part of her was worried. This generosity felt strange. It felt almost dangerous. "Ambassador," she said quietly, "why are you doing this?" Tewu stood beside her and watched the cubs explore the snack room. Bora had already opened the bag and was stuffing crunchy pieces into its mouth. Duri was reading the box with curious eyes. Nuri was sniffing the dried fruit carefully before taking a bite. "Because it cost me nothing," Tewu said, "and it brings them joy. That is reason enough." Yuna shook her head slowly. "On my world, nothing is free. Everything has a cost." "On my world, too," Tewu admitted. "But we choose what to count as cost. Feeding hungry children is not a cost. It is an investment." "An investment in what?" Tewu smiled. "In kindness. In friendship. In a galaxy where species help each other instead of fear each other." Yuna did not know how to respond to that, so she just watched her cubs eat. Bora discovered something called chocolate and made sounds of pure happiness. Duri found a salty snack and ate the entire bag in minutes. Nuri tried something spicy, made a funny face, and then tried it again because it was so interesting. The young human woman with the data pad laughed at the cubs' reactions. "They are so cute," she said. "May I take a picture?" Yuna did not know what a picture was, but she nodded anyway. The woman held up a small device, and it made a clicking sound. Time passed. The cubs ate and ate. Yuna expected Tewu to eventually tell them to stop, but he never did. He just watched with that gentle smile on his face. Finally, the cubs began to slow down. Their bellies were round and full. They moved slower than before. They made satisfied humming sounds. "I think they are done," Yuna said. "For now." Tewu agreed with a chuckle. The cubs waddled back to their mother. Their fur was messy with crumbs. Their faces were smeared with chocolate and dried fruit. "Thank you," Bora said to Tewu. Its voice was sleepy. "That was the best food ever." "You are very welcome," Tewu replied. He bent down to look at the cub. "You can come back whenever you want. Remember, help yourself." Yuna gathered her cubs and led them back to the guest quarters. They were so full that they could barely walk straight. By the time they reached the room, they were already falling asleep. She tucked them into bed and watched them curl up together. Their little bellies rose and fell. Their tails twitched with happy dreams. Yuna sat in a chair by the window and looked out at the stars. "Help yourself," the human had said. Such simple words. Such an impossible concept. But maybe, just maybe, there was something to learn here. Something that her people had forgotten long ago. She closed her eyes and let herself rest. Tomorrow would bring more meetings, more conversations, more chances to understand these strange, generous creatures called humans. But for now, her cubs were full and happy, and that was enough. 2 days passed on Haven Station. The meetings between Yuna and the human leaders continued. They talked about many things: trade routes, technology sharing, cultural exchanges, plans for future visits. Everything was going well, but the cubs had discovered a secret. It started small. On the second day, while their mother was in meetings, Bora led its siblings back to the snack room. They remembered what the kind human had said. Help yourself. So they did. They ate a few snacks, just enough to satisfy their hunger, and then returned to their quarters. On the third day, they went back again. This time, they stayed longer. They tried new foods. They discovered flavors they had never imagined. Sweet things, salty things, crunchy things, soft things. There was so much to explore. By the fourth day, the cubs had made the snack room their second home. It was early afternoon when Commander Hannah decided to get herself a snack. She had been working since morning, reviewing security reports and checking the station systems. Her stomach was growling. She needed something to eat. She walked through the corridors with a tired smile on her face. She was thinking about the chocolate cookies that she had seen in the snack room yesterday. They were her favorite. She hoped there was still some left. When she reached the snack room, she stopped walking. The door was open. That was normal. But the sounds coming from inside were not normal. She heard crunching, chewing, small chirping noises, and something that sounded like purring. Hannah stepped forward and looked through the doorway. Her eyes went wide. The 3 Volari cubs were inside the snack room, and they had turned it into a disaster zone. The shelves were almost empty. Bags and boxes were scattered across the floor. Wrappers and containers lay everywhere. The cubs were sitting in the middle of this mess, surrounded by food. Bora was holding a large bag of chips. The silver cub was reaching inside with both paws and pulling out handfuls of chips to stuff into its mouth. Its cheeks were so full that it looked like a small balloon. Dur had found the chocolate supply. The golden cub had chocolate smeared all over its face and paws. It was licking a wrapper that had once contained a chocolate bar. Its eyes were slightly glazed, as if it was in some kind of happy dream. And little Nuri, the white cub, had discovered the dried fruit section. The smallest cub was lying on its back, with its round belly pointing at the ceiling. Its mouth was still chewing, but its eyes were half closed. A container of dried mangoes rested on its chest. Hannah stood in the doorway for a long moment. She could not believe what she was seeing. What happened here?" she whispered. The cubs froze. They looked at Hannah with wide, guilty eyes. Chips fell from Bora's mouth. Chocolate dripped from Duri's paws. Nuri made a small burping sound. The human said, "Help yourself." Bora said weakly. Its voice was muffled by the food in its cheeks. Hannah looked around the room again. The entire snack reserve. Gone. All of it. Eaten by 3 small, fluffy aliens in the span of a few hours. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. How did you eat so much?" she asked. The cubs looked at each other. They seemed confused by the question. "We were hungry," Duri explained simply. Chocolate was still smeared around its mouth. Hannah walked into the room. Her boots crunched on empty wrappers. She picked up an empty box and read the label. It had contained 24 protein bars. All of them were gone. This was supposed to last a crew for a month, Hannah said. But she was not angry. Her voice was filled with amazement. "You 3 ate a month's worth of snacks." "Sorry," Nuri said softly. The white cub tried to sit up, but fell back down. Its belly was too full. It just lay there like a small, fluffy ball. Hannah sat down on the floor among the wrappers. She looked at the cubs. Their bellies were round and huge. They looked like they might pop. "Are you okay?" she asked with concern. "You did not eat too much?" "We are fine," Bora said. But the silver cub did not look fine. It looked very sleepy and very full. Hannah pulled out her communication device. She pressed a button. "Tewu," she said, "you need to come to the snack room. Now!" A few minutes later, Ambassador Tewu arrived. He saw Hannah sitting on the floor. He saw the empty shelves. He saw the cubs lying among the wrappers like stuffed toys. He stood in the doorway for a long moment. Then he started to laugh. It was a deep, warm laugh that filled the small room. He laughed until tears appeared in the corners of his eyes. He leaned against the doorframe and just kept laughing. "This," he said between laughs, "is the best thing I've seen all year." Hannah looked up at him. "Ambassador, they ate everything. The whole reserve." "I can see that," Tewu said. He wiped his eyes and smiled widely. Those are some very hungry cubs. The human said help yourself, Boar repeated weakly. It seemed to be the only defense the cub could think of. I did say that, Tewu agreed. He walked into the room and sat down next to Hannah. I just did not expect you to take me so seriously. Duri's tail wagged slowly. You are not mad? Mel? Tewu shook his head. Why would I be mad? Food is meant to be eaten. You just ate it faster than I expected. Nuri made another small burping sound. Sorry, it whispered again. Tewu reached over and gently patted the white cub's round belly. Nuri made a happy purring sound. Do not apologize, Tewu said softly. You did nothing wrong. At that moment, High Delegate Yuna appeared in the doorway. She had finished her meeting early and had come looking for her cubs. She saw the empty room. She saw the mess. She saw her 3 children lying on the floor with bellies as round as moons. Her face went pale. What have you done? She breathed. The cubs tried to hide behind each other, which was impossible because they could barely move. They just squirmed around on the floor like fluffy round balls. Mother, Bora said quickly, the humans said we could help ourselves. Yuna looked at Tewu. Her eyes were filled with horror. Ambassador, she said. Her voice was shaking. I am so sorry. I do not know what to say. My children have consumed your entire food supply. Tewu stood up. He was still smiling. It is just snacks, he said calmly. We have plenty more. Plenty more? Yuna repeated. She did not seem to understand. But this was your reserve, your emergency supply. On my world, this would be... She could not finish the sentence. On her world, consuming another family's food reserve was a terrible crime. It could start feuds that lasted for generations. It could even lead to war. Delegate Yuna, Tewu said gently. He walked over to her and placed a hand on her shoulder. Please breathe. Everything is fine. Fine? Yuna's voice was high. My children ate everything. How can this be fine? Hannah stood up and dusted off her uniform. She was smiling now, too. We can restock the snack room in a day, she explained. We have supply ships that come regularly. This is not a crisis. Yuna stared at her. Then she stared at Tewu. Then she looked at her cubs, who were watching her with worried eyes. You are truly not angry, she asked softly. Truly, Tewu said. In fact, I think this is wonderful. Wonderful. Tewu nodded. Your cubs trusted us enough to eat freely. They felt safe here. They felt welcome. That means more to me than any trade agreement. Yuna was silent for a long moment. She looked at her children again. They were still round and full. They still looked worried. But there was something else in their eyes now. Hope. They had been so scared that they would be punished. But these strange humans were not angry. They were laughing. They were smiling. They were treating the whole situation like it was funny and sweet. Yuna felt something break inside her, something hard and cold that she had carried for a long time. The fear that had been with her since she was a cub, the constant worry about resources, the belief that generosity was weakness. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe her whole world was wrong. She walked over to her cubs and knelt down beside them. She gathered them in her arms, even though they were almost too heavy to lift with their full bellies. I am not mad at you, she whispered. I was scared, but I am not mad. The cubs made happy chirping sounds. They snuggled against their mother. Tewu watched this scene with warmth in his heart. This was why he had become an ambassador, not for the trade deals, not for the politics, but for moments like this, moments when walls came down, moments when different species found common ground. Come, he said to Yuna, let us get your cubs back to your quarters. I think they need a very long nap. Yuna nodded. With Hannah's help, she lifted her cubs and carried them out of the destroyed snack room. Behind them, the empty shelves stood as a testament to the biggest snack attack in Haven Station's history. It would become a story that humans told for years. The day the Volari cubs ate everything. It was a story told with laughter, never with anger. And it was only the beginning. Yuna could not sleep that night. She lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling. Her cubs were sleeping beside her, their round bellies still full from the day's feast. They snored softly, making small whistling sounds through their noses. They had no worries at all. But Yuna's mind was racing. She kept thinking about what had happened. Her children had eaten the entire snack reserve of a human space station. Yes, the humans had smiled and laughed. Yes, Ambassador Tewu had said everything was fine. But Yuna could not believe it. There had to be consequences. There were always consequences. On her world, the Valari lived by strict rules. Resources were carefully managed. Every family received a share of food based on their size and needs. Taking more than your share was a serious crime. It showed greed. It showed disrespect. It could lead to punishment, shame, and even exile. The worst part was the debt. When you consume another family's resources, you owed them. You owed them until you paid back every single bite. Some debts lasted for generations. Families have been destroyed by such debts. Wars have been fought over less than what her cubs had eaten today. Yuna got out of bed quietly. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. They were cold and distant, just like the leaders of her world would be if they learned about this. She had to fix this. She had to make things right. When morning came, Yuna left her cubs sleeping and went to find Ambassador Tewu. She found him in the observation deck, drinking something hot from a cup and watching the stars. "Ambassador," she said. Her voice was formal and stiff. "I need to speak with you." Tewu turned around. He smiled when he saw her, but his smile faded when he noticed her serious expression. "Of course," he said. "Please, sit down." They sat in chairs facing the large window. The light from distant stars painted soft shadows on their faces. "I have been thinking about yesterday." Yuna began. She held her hands tightly in her lap. "I know you said there would be no consequences, but I cannot accept that." Tewu tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Yuna took a deep breath. "On my world, consuming another's resources without proper exchange creates a debt. This debt must be paid. There is no other way." "Delegate, Yuna," Tewu said gently. "I told you yesterday. There is no debt. The food was given freely." "That is not possible," Yuna insisted. Her eyes were desperate. "Nothing is given freely. Everything has a cost. If you do not name the cost now, you will name it later. And my children will carry this burden forever." Tewu set down his cup. He looked at Yuna for a long moment, studying her face. He could see real fear there, real worry. This was not about politics or diplomacy. This was about a mother trying to protect her children. "Tell me about your world," he said softly. "Tell me why you believe this." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she began to speak. "My planet is covered in ice. The winters are long and cruel. Food does not grow easily. Our ancestors learned early that survival depends on careful management. Every fruit, every grain, every piece of meat is counted and shared according to strict rules." She paused and looked out the window. "When I was a cub, there was a family in our village who fell on hard times. The father became sick. He could not hunt. The family grew hungry. One night, the mother took food from the communal storage. Just a little. Just enough to feed her children." "What happened?" Tewu asked. Yuna's voice grew cold. "They were discovered. The village council declared them thieves. The family was shamed. They were given the worst jobs, the smallest shares. The mother carried a mark on her fur for the rest of her life, a sign of her crime." She turned to look at Tewu. There were tears in her eyes. "My cubs ate your entire reserve. Not just a little. Everything. On my world. This would destroy their futures. They would be marked as greedy. They would carry this shame forever." Tewu was silent for a long moment. He had not realized how serious this was for her. He had laughed about the situation, treated it as a funny story. But for Yuna, it was a nightmare. "Delegate, Yuna," he said finally. "I understand now. Your world has taught you that resources are scarce and must be protected. This makes sense for a planet covered in ice. Your rules kept your people alive. He reached out and gently took her hand. But we are not on your world. We are on a human station. And humans have different rules. Yuna looked at his hand, holding hers. On her world, such casual touch between strangers would be shocking. But somehow it felt comforting. What rules do humans have? She asked. Taewoo smiled. We have a rule that says children should never go hungry if there is food available. We have a rule that says guests should be treated with generosity. We have a rule that says sharing makes us stronger, not weaker. But the cost, Yuna whispered. There must be a cost. There is no cost, Taewoo said firmly. Let me explain something. That snack room you saw, it is restocked every week. We have so much food that we sometimes have to throw some away because it goes bad before anyone can eat it. Yuna stared at him. You throw away food? Sometimes. Yes, we try not to, but it happens. Our ships bring more supplies than we can use. We have farms on other stations that produce more than we need. For us, food is not scarce. It is abundant. Yuna could not believe what she was hearing. Her whole life, she had been taught that food was precious, limited, something to fight over. And here were these humans, throwing away because they had too much. I do not understand your world, she admitted. That is okay, Taewoo said. We do not need to understand everything about each other right away. That is what meetings like this are for. We learn about each other slowly. At that moment, a sound came from the doorway. They both turned to look. The 3 cubs were standing there. They had woken up and followed their mother's scent. Their fur was messy from sleep. Their bellies were less round now, but still bigger than normal. Nuri, the smallest cub, walked over to Yuna. It looked up at her with worried eyes. Mother, Nuri said softly, are we in trouble? Yuna looked at her youngest child. Then she looked at Taewoo. He was watching her with kind eyes, waiting to see what she would do. She knelt down and gathered Nuri in her arms. No, she said. Her voice was thick with emotion. You are not in trouble. But we ate all the food, Bora said from the doorway. The silver cub looked worried. Everyone will be angry. Taewoo stood up from his chair. He walked over to the cubs and knelt down so he was at their level. Listen to me, he said gently. You did nothing wrong. I told you to help yourself. You help yourself. That is exactly what I wanted. Duri tilted its golden head. Really? Really, Taewoo confirmed. In fact, I am happy that you liked our food so much. It means we can share more things in the future. The cubs looked at their mother for confirmation. She nodded slowly. The humans have different rules, she explained. They do not believe in debt for food. They believe in sharing freely, like stories. Nuri said suddenly. Everyone looked at the small white cub. What do you mean? Yuna asked. When someone tells a story, Nuri explained in its small voice, they do not ask for payment. They share the story because they want others to enjoy it. The sharing makes the story better, not worse. Taewoo smiled widely. That is exactly right. You are very smart, little one. Nuri's tail wagged happily. Yuna looked at her cubs. Then she looked at Taewoo. Something was changing inside her. The fear was fading. The rigid beliefs were softening. Maybe there was more than one way to live. Maybe her world's rules were not the only rules that worked. She stood up and faced Taewoo. She bowed her head deeply. Thank you, she said, for your patience, for your kindness, for teaching us something we did not know we needed to learn. Taewoo bowed in return. Thank you for trusting us enough to let your cubs eat their fill. That trust is worth more than any snack reserve. From that moment, something changed between the Valari and the humans. The formal distance began to fade. The careful words became warmer. The meetings became more like conversations between friends. And through it all, 3 fluffy cubs learned that the galaxy was bigger and stranger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. A galaxy where sometimes, just sometimes, food was free. The visit was coming to an end. 7 days had passed since the Valari ship first docked at Haven Station. 7 days of meetings, conversations, and discoveries. 7 days that would change the relationship between two species forever. The snack room had been restocked the day after the Cubs emptied it. True to Taiwo's word, a supply ship had arrived with more food than anyone could eat. The Cubs had watched in amazement as boxes and bags were unloaded. They had never seen so much food in their entire lives. Now, on the last day, Una stood in the docking bay with her Cubs beside her. Their ship was ready. The silver vessel waited patiently, its engines humming softly. It was time to go home. But first there was a goodbye. Ambassador Tewu walked across the docking bay with Commander Hannah beside him. Several other humans followed. All the people who had worked with the Valari during the visit. They were smiling, but there was sadness in their eyes, too. Goodbyes were never easy. "Hi, Delegate Una," Tewu said formally. "On behalf of Haven Station and all of humanity, I thank you for this visit. We have learned much from each other." Una bowed her head. "Ambassador Tewu, the thanks should come from us. You have shown us kindness that we did not expect. You have challenged beliefs that we thought were unchangeable. We will not forget this." Tewu smiled. "I hope this is just the beginning. There is so much more we can share." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. It was wrapped in colorful paper, with a bow on top. He held it out to Una. "A gift," he said, "for your journey home." Una took the box carefully. She did not know what was inside, but she could guess from the weight. "More food?" she asked. Tewu grinned. "Snacks. The same ones your Cubs loved so much. There's enough to last the whole trip back to your world." The Cubs' eyes went wide. Their tails started wagging immediately. "Thank you," Bor said. The silver Cub could barely contain its excitement. "Yes, thank you," Duri added. The golden Cub was already thinking about the chocolate inside. Little Nuri stepped forward. The white Cub had been the shyest of three, but 7 days with the humans had made it braver. It walked right up to Tewu and looked up at him with its big eyes. "Mr. Ambassador," Nuri said in its small voice, "can I ask you something?" Tewu knelt down so he was at Nuri's level. "Of course. What is it? Why are humans so kind?" The question was simple, a child's question, but it made Tewu pause. He thought about it for a long moment. "That is a good question," he said finally. I think we are kind because we know what it feels like to be alone. A long time ago, we thought we were the only intelligent life in the universe. We were lonely. We dreamed of meeting other beings like ourselves." He reached out and gently patted Nuri's head. The Cub made a happy purring sound. "Now that we have met other species, we do not want them to feel alone or afraid. We want them to feel welcome. We want them to know that the universe can be a friendly place." Nuri tilted its head. "Is that why you shared your food?" "Partly," Tewu said, "but also because sharing food is how humans show love. When we feed someone, we are saying, 'I care about you. I want you to be happy and healthy. I want you to be part of my family.'" Una listened to this conversation with tears in her eyes. She had spent her whole life believing that resources were meant to be hoarded and protected. But humans believe the opposite. They believe that sharing made you stronger, not weaker. They believe that generosity was a form of love. It was such a beautiful idea. "Ambassador," she said. Her voice was thick with emotion. "I want you to know something. When I return to my world, I will tell everyone about what happened here. I will tell them about the snack room. I will tell them about your kindness. I will tell them that humans are not like any species we have ever met." Tewu stood up and faced her. "What will you tell them specifically?" Una thought for a moment. Then she smiled. "I will tell them that humans said, 'Help yourself.' And when my Cubs took everything, the humans just laughed and gave us more. I will tell them that humans do not see generosity as weakness. They see it as strength." She looked at her Cubs, then back at Tewu, "And I will tell them that we should learn from the humans. That maybe our old ways are not the only ways. That maybe there is enough in the universe for everyone. If we just learn to share." Tewu bowed his head deeply. This was the best possible outcome he could have hoped for. Not just a trade agreement, not just a political alliance, but a change in how an entire species thought about the world. You honor us, he said sincerely. And if your world ever needs help, you know where to find us. Commander Hannah stepped forward. She was holding a small stuffed toy shaped like a human. She had bought it from the station gift shop. This is for you, Nuri, she said. She handed the toy to the white cub. So you remember us. Nuri took the toy and hugged it tightly. Its eyes were shining with happiness. I will never forget, Nuri promised. Never, ever. The other cubs received gifts too. Bora got a small book about human stories. Duri received a puzzle game that humans played for fun. They held their gifts like treasures. The time had come to say goodbye. Yuna gathered her cubs and guided them toward the ship. But at the entrance, she stopped and turned around one more time. Ambassador Tewu, she called out. I have one last question. Yes. Do humans have a word for what we experience here? This feeling of being welcomed and fed and cared for without any expectation of payment. Tewu smiled. It was a wide, warm smile that reached his eyes. Yes, he said. We call it hospitality. It is one of our oldest traditions. Some humans believe it is our most important one. Yuna nodded slowly. She turned the word over in her mind. Hospitality. She liked it. She would teach it to her cubs. She would teach it to her world. Goodbye, Ambassador, she said, until we meet again. Goodbye, High Delegate. Safe travels. The Valari boarded their ship. The docking bay doors closed. A few minutes later, the silver vessel detached from the station and began its long journey home. Tewu watched through the window as the ship grew smaller and smaller. Eventually, it disappeared among the stars. Hannah came to stand beside him. That went well, she said. Yes, Tewu agreed. Better than I could have hoped. Do you think they will really change their ways? Tewu thought about the question. He remembered Nuri's big eyes. He remembered Yuna's tears. He remembered the cubs lying on the floor with their round bellies, completely trusting and completely happy. I think change starts with small things, he said finally. A child learning that food can be shared freely. A mother learning that debt is not always necessary. These are small seeds, but small seeds grow into large trees. He turned away from the window and headed back into the station. Now, he said, we need to restock the snack room again. I have a feeling we will have more visitors soon. Hannah laughed. More visitors or more hungry cubs? Hopefully both, Tewu said with a grin. Far away, on a silver ship traveling through the stars, 3 cubs sat together and opened their box of snacks. They shared them equally, just like humans did. They laughed and chirped and made happy sounds. And in the pilot seat, High Delegate Yuna listened to her children's joy and smiled. The universe was bigger than she had known. And Kinder too, all because a human had said 2 simple words. Help yourself. Those words would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. They would be written in history books. They would be taught to children on a dozen worlds. They would become a symbol of what humans stood for. Not weapons, not power, not domination. Just kindness, just sharing, just love. And that, in the end, was how humanity made its mark on the stars. Not through conquest, but through snacks.